Our Israeli hosts saved the best for last. It was time to learn about the latest developments in promoting Israeli content for TV and film. Organized by the CoPro Foundation, the first CoPro International Scripted Television Conference aims to expand the reach of Israeli storytelling and connect the Israeli TV industry with international organizations. The goal: to foster collaborations and partnerships in scripted television and bring these stories to wider global audiences. As CoPro Chair Liza Uzrat wrote in the program, Israel has long been recognized as a wellspring of bold, innovative storytelling. Israeli content has enthralled viewers around the world with acclaimed series like Fauda, Tehran, Stizel, Zero Hour, and most recently Bad Boy and The German, proving that powerful local content resonates on a global scale. These shows and many others reflect the diversity, intensity, and creativity that define Israeli scripted content. One of the best highlights of the conference was the overview of global content trends in 2025. This was presented by Dana Stern, executive producer of In Transit Productions.
Well, I think Israel, for its tiny size, is a huge player for bad or for worse or for good or for, just creates huge interest throughout the world. Anywhere we travel, we meet people who've heard of Israel, who know about the history. Certainly, we're in the news constantly and have been for decades. So I think there's that name recognition. People know a lot about us. They might have prejudice and think one thing, and then meet an Israeli and discover a whole other world. And I think we use our storytelling and our storytelling abilities and the content that we produce to maybe open up that world, that perception that people have of what we are, what our history is, what is happening currently. And I think the opportunity to tell that in scripted stories and sometimes in documentary, also non-scripted, is a privilege to be part of that. And I think people who end up watching the shows that we make, whether in the original or adaptations of Israeli ideas that have been reformatted, hopefully get another glimpse into our very rich culture and heritage and abilities.
You mentioned that there are various platforms, streaming services, and with so much things that are happening.
With a fragmented viewership that's happening. And I have young kids and they never open a television. And if they do, they're streaming from their phone or using the apps. So I think it's challenging. Is that what you mean, like everybody's watching something different?
And is television business still business?
Still a business. That's a very good question. Is television business still a business? I want to believe that it is. There's still a lot of value in coming together at a certain time, watching something, or having a certain show, a format, whether it's a reality or a game show or a sports event or anything live that's going on, or just a good series that really hits the zeitgeist, that becomes part of the conversation and becomes part of culture. And I think we have, that form of entertainment, that mass global entertainment, which is television, to think for a lot of our cultural tastes and our opinions and things that we all know and talk about, even language and idioms that we pick up along the way. So I think there's still room for that, but it obviously is challenging, and if I was a young executive now, in my early 20s rather than my early 50s, I would probably not be, aiming for television. I'd probably look at, alternative, cheaper ways to produce, more immediate relationship with the viewership, less of a traditional model. But I think, there's still going to be an audience for television. There's still going to be an audience for kind of premium, well-made, well-produced content. And it's the same thing with film. People have written off, the theatrical experience time and time again, and yet there's nothing funner, right? And you still see kids going to the movies, and you see adults going to the movies, and it's still an experience, and it's still something fun to do. So I think there's room for both.
You have showcased here a lot of Israeli content, very creative work very creative people. The richness of Israeli content and the mind of the Israelis. And now that there's about 20 or more countries coming from different parts of the world, what specific message are you trying to convey to us or around the world?
I would say, look, again, this is television. It's a business. I'd say we're open for business, if that's not, too pushy. I think I live abroad. I actually live in Germany. I live in Berlin, but I work all the time with Israelis. I do a lot of Israeli formats. I work on Israeli shows, and I also do a lot of international productions. And I will say this, there is no one better at storytelling than Israeli creators. So I would say, give it a chance, look at what we're doing, look at some of our ideas, look at our formats, look at our creators, and see if there's inspiration to be had, if there's collaboration to be made. And I think that's the message of today.
I don't know if you know, but I actually asked for them to bring somebody from the Philippines. It was very important for me that somebody from the Philippines and somebody from Thailand will come, but it was very last minute and we were lucky to have you here. My take is that people are curious about the world, not just Israel, and people are curious about the potential of joining power and doing things together. I think it's weird, nobody here talked about AI, or at least not when I was here, because AI is going to bring a major change to the world. But for me, having such a unique blend of people from countries where I've never visited or met people from there, like Rwanda, Cameroon, Mongolia, for me it was quite an experience to learn about their industry and also to see all of you, not just learning about Israel, but also communicating between yourselves. So for me, that was quite a great experience to see this industry, which is sometimes local, but also here global, get together in such a great way. I really enjoyed it. I think the message would probably be that obviously these are difficult times for us. I think that what happened on October 7th triggered us when it comes to thinking about our past. And it reminded some people, what happened during the Holocaust, during World War II. That definitely triggered me. It scares you and it makes you react, first of all, very emotionally. And part of being emotional is being violent. I think that the war has gone on for a really long time because the hostages did not return. I think we are afraid that if Hamas will not be eliminated, they will return again. And that's why I think the war keeps on going. But war is always a bad thing. It's a bad thing. It has casualties. People are paying, dear price on both sides. I know that it's easier to see the Palestinians as victims at the moment. So even if you just look at the numbers, and I don't want to say something like they started it, I think it's stupid, but this situation here has been festering for such a long period of time. It exploded in a very violent way on both sides, first on October 7th and then in Israel's reaction. And I hope that the fact that so much ugliness came out might help this whole area to restart. But the world not seeing our side is something that a lot of us feel. A lot of us feel that the world does not see the Israeli side. Maybe the way that we explain ourselves to the world is wrong. Maybe it's easier to sympathize with whoever is weaker in this situation. I think the world should look at us with sympathy as well.
How can we measure sympathy on killings? Both sides are killing because that's a war. I mean, there's a terrorist group killed, you saw people dancing. Anybody could have been there dancing. It's not the military. Two states go into war with each other. The military kill the military. The military doesn't kill civilians. This is a rule of the wars since 3,000 years now.
We know that television remains a big business, but a lot of things are changing it. Geopolitical events, social media and everything. You, as someone who has lots of experience in managing television, is television still relevant?
I have your dilemma. I work on television. My mother worked on television. My father made films. He was a screenwriter, 20 films, 30 films, very good films. I manage televisions, big televisions. I don't see television more than 5 minutes per day. I'm losing this habit. My grandmother, when she was alive, she was staying like that 10 hours viewing television. Your probably grandmother was doing the same.
Yes.
My father, my mother now, she stays 5, 6, 7 hours on the sofa watching television, news and films, movies. I don't. My kids don't. My kids, I mean, I work on television. My kids don't see any more television. All they do is their mobile.
Yes.
Everything is here.
Everything's there. Yes.
Everything is here. Social media, whatever you want to, it's here. Celebrities, it's here. You can touch them. On television, you have some distance. So I don't know, on television is not so fast as the mobile because you have it on their pocket. The television is big screen. You cannot have it in your pocket. So I don't know in 10 years, on 20 years, we'll have any more televisions.
So assuming if you were the owner of, you're not employed, you are the owner of the television station, what do you do? How do you reinvent that?
I'll change everything. I change, as I did with my televisions, I change everything. I'll go to
Format, programming?
Format and program. I'll go follow the taste of YouTube. YouTube is the best taste finder. You see how many views you have in YouTube. If you have low views, you change the program. If you want to go on like that, you follow that taste. YouTube will tell you what to follow. This is the road. Follow YouTube taste. Something that people don't see in YouTube, don't buy.
I think it's a very interesting time to be visiting Israel with the broader context of what's going on and understanding the role that filmmakers or creatives have in that process. For me, it's really about fostering collaboration, dialogue with each other, understanding how we can work together. I think as storytellers, it's our role to observe and to notice what's going on in the world, and whether you want to make work that's inherently political or completely apolitical, both necessary and important parts of the creative process. So for me, it's not so much about commenting on what is specifically going on in the country, but understanding where Israel fits in the international film community and television and the creative community. And I've had the pleasure of meeting so many different people from Israel over the years, and I'm very inspired by the creativity that's coming out of this country, the entrepreneurship, the concepts that are being picked up by the American market, particularly for television adaptations, for international film festivals, for professional development opportunities for young creatives and film students coming into the industry. These are all parts of the work that I'm sort of focusing on.
You know, basically, I don't run a media outlet, and I have nothing to do with politics or with the news. But I guess that it's a very interesting way to understand a very old conflict, you know, which has big ramifications. You know, it's part of a bigger geopolitical power play between Iran and the States, you know, which has a lot of things happening in. I think this is a land that has been taken by violence many times, and this last one is a huge one. Both sides have wronged themselves very big, you know. I think that we've been able, like for instance in the university yesterday, we were able to discuss with a lot of people in a real way. I think we had a real communication with them. So I just hope that they can talk between each other and fix the problem that they have, you know. The bottleneck that they have, it's really, really big.
You're in the business of producing content for television, for film. What is it that you think will somehow change in terms of content development?
Content is developing by itself, you know. Now you have the vertical, as you said, in your exposition of your company. And you know, nowadays they are making even series in vertical format. I don't see them, but there's a lot of people seeing them. There's a market for that. In terms of geopolitical, well, yeah, every time you have a shift, you know, all these trade wars with China, that's probably gonna affect content, you know, like the pole of China, and China is making a lot of content. It's probably gonna get more to different places that hasn't been before, you know. And if Trump does what he says about putting 100% tariff in all the foreign films, well, there's other countries that are making a lot that we don't know in the West, we don't know about, you know. So we're probably going to get a little bit more of that. We're exporting audiovisual entertainment. We are one of the big exporters. Coffee, petroleum, entertainment, you know. And I come from a city called Bogota. I'm working with the city right now to try to get also a policy about tax credit if you come and shoot in the city. It works. I was talking to one of the Israeli producers. It works as branding, you know, your city. And in Korea, like people are going to Korea all the time because they are seeing K-pop, K-movies, you know. It already works in Colombia. Medellin, the second biggest city in the country, is full of tourism because of all the reggaeton, you know, J Balvin, Maluma, all these. The stories are never gonna die, you know. What makes us different from animals is that we have language, we communicate. And we've always told stories to teach, to tell something, you know, and so stories, it doesn't matter if you change the format. If a story is good, it's gonna make it, even in the movies, in TV, in theater, in a little phone, you know, in any way you make it. If you have a good story, that's the king.
I became a war journalist after 2017 when a missile killed a small baby and her grandmother in their own house. We had this war since 1990s. The war started at that time, First Karabakh War, and this war lasted almost 30 years. And we didn't have an opportunity to share our story. To tell our truth, because people internationally, they didn't realize what kind of conflict is it. They didn't know our region, they didn't know us. That's why it took us so long, almost 30 years, to tell our story, to start to be heard. We became powerful like an economical country, like a country in the region, and we became known internationally. And after that, we could raise our voice. That's why for me it is important to be in the countries that had some kind of conflict, that have stories they want to share.
After getting an invitation from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, when I see the topics, I want to exchange the knowledge, I want to gain the knowledge. That was very, very important. But at other hand, the brand image of Israel, you know, the war happening. Like others, I also had a different perception before coming here, but I found Israel a completely different country. In terms of development, definitely there is a war, there is a crisis, there is so many bad things that people talk. But Israel, for me, is a place to understand about its culture, development, you know, and the way they are handling the crisis, which is very, very important for us. Because I belong to the country, Nepal, we are peace lover. Our country's policy is non-alignment. So we are balancing with all the countries. But here is a complete different image. Even like we were taken to the Jerusalem, then even the border of Gaza, we all witnessed the sound of the, like, you know, the security force, the people are there, then the movement, the massacre, you know, whatever, you know, very, very bad and emotional situation we both saw from our naked eyes. But when we travel into the street, Tel Aviv, then going to the restaurants, meeting with the people, it looks that there is nothing happened.
With the recent happenings that's going on, with the geopolitical events, what do you think is the relevance of all this in your work as a filmmaker? Will this change anything in your style, or your formula is the right formula in filmmaking?
No, I don't think that there's a right formula and the wrong formula, but at the end of the day, the geopolitics and the world politics is really going crazy. At the end of the day, one of the reasons why I'm here, or many of our colleagues are here, is because we have had some form or experiences in a way or another of violence or turmoil in our own region, in our own country. Specifically for Rwanda, we went through a genocide where 1 million people got killed in 100 days. And that has triggered literally the relevance of my career and my work. So I've made films on genocide and testimonies. I've traveled to Germany. First time to come here to Israel to really witness firsthand literally the magnitude of suffering, of pain, of violence, and things like that. So in a sense, the fact that I'm here, it's not going to change much, but I think it magnifies the visual that I had and what the world should have, because mass atrocities and violence and terrorism should be the things that people who are in the media and in the creative industry should put at the forefront to combat and to make sure that these things don't happen to mankind, because we all have the same blood. You know, there's no blue blood or green blood, there's no red blood. So the suffering of children, the suffering of older people, the suffering of mankind is our suffering. So someone's suffering is my suffering. If somebody's suffering in Vietnam or in Philippines or in Korea or here in Tel Aviv or in Gaza, so all of that, these are things that are very relevant for our career, and I think maybe that's one of the reasons why we all got to gather here to actually share a message of peace and reconciliation, if there is a way how that can work, because Rwanda has gone through a path of reconciliation and nation building whereby, you know, warring parties and conflicting individuals and communities can actually find a way to forge peace. And I know, you know, there's a trauma, you know, be it here and in Rwanda and around the world, but I think as a society we need to figure out how to overcome those kind of things and really do like the right politics or the right education, you know, like if you have kids who are being taught by the Hamas to hate and hate and hate, is not good. And so there should be more investment in the tolerance and peace building and really defense mechanism that can create a union rather than a division.
We've just been with each other for a few days, but it's been like we've known each other for years. And I think that is one key thing that I love about us coming together. And thanks to the Israeli government and the foreign ministry for bringing this program together. And about my key takeaways from this trip, Ghana and Israel has a long-standing relationship, but you know, with the war and everything that's going on, you hear different stories. But coming here, I have seen the reality on the ground from the perspective of the people and the pain and the suffering they're going through. And this is not something that should happen to anybody, any country, anywhere. And so it's giving me a different perception about the ongoing war and the need for peace, actually. Because regardless of anything else, peace is very important, because it is only with that the killings will stop, the abductions will stop, and everything else. So even though people may say that, or people think Israel is not safe, I have seen a different part of it. It's just not the entire country, unlike, you know, the perception. Because when you hear people say, oh, you're traveling to Israel, oh, are you sure it's safe and all that? But we are safe, you are safe, I'm safe. So it is not the entire country that is not safe. It's just one part. And for me, it's an eye-opening experience, learning about the history of the country, even the historical cities of Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, even the Holocaust and how far they have come. And you realize that this country or the people have been persecuted for a very long time. And so it has even created that sense of resilience in them. And I love that about the Israeli people, that regardless of how much they fall, they rise 1,000 times. People have, you know, shared their stories about the devastations that have occurred. But for me, aside all the distractions and everything, yes, they are good. But one thing that I would want to project more is the mindset of the people. Because when you speak to any Israeli today, yes, they tell you that, oh, this is happening, but we are optimistic. That is the one thing that runs through the Israelis, that they are optimistic, even though this is happening. So I would want to tell the story of resilience from the perspective of the Israeli people, that yes, we have seen the distractions, but they are still strong. Life is going on. Even those who have been affected by the war or the October 7, disaster or massacre are trying to rise above it and live their normal lives. It's been more than 600 days, but life is going on. So that is what I want to show out there, that regardless of everything, life is going on. Yeah.
Amidst the urgent calls for the release of the remaining hostages in Gaza, revisiting Israel at a time when fear still lingers is bold, brave, and undeniably risky. But it was worth it. it is also the responsibility of media to show what is happening on the ground and to shed light on what lies ahead. Even as the war continues to unfold, life must go on. Producers, writers, storytellers, and creators press forward, crafting content that is not only relevant but deeply meaningful. Through these stories, audiences across the globe connect and reconnect, reminding us that even in the face of complexity and conflict, there is always hope. As we close, one thing is clear: voices will not be silenced. They will continue to resonate, bridging cultures, igniting global collaborations, and transcending borders. The stories of Israel will be told and retold on the world stage. And now, more than ever, the world is watching. For Open for Business,
This is Caesar Vallejos. Marami pong salamat.